Welcome to the City Council regular meeting. I am calling this meeting to order at 6:30. Please stand and join me for the flag salute. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, please take roll.
Councilmember Gama,
Here.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Here.
Councilmember Perez,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez,
Here.
and Mayor McQueen Lejeune.
Here. We're going to begin with our inspiration, Councilmember Gama.
I'm excited. I love inspiration. By the end of this short little presentation, I hope that you're all inspired. Okay? So here we go. So there's my inspiration is about water. There's two sources of water in California. There's the California Aqueduct and the Colorado River. This is a picture of the California Aqueduct. A man by the name of Mulholland engineered this in like 1937, and he did it with a piece of paper and a, what do you call it, surveying equipment and a pencil writing down. And so it's gravity fed, and it comes down. And then this is the other source of water for California. This is the Colorado River, and it's held up at the Boulder Dam. That's what the Boulder Dam looks like. This was constructed in 1937. There's a hydroelectric power plant there, and it goes down this way towards California, because it starts off in Arizona and Nevada. And this is Lake Havasu, and if you've ever been to Lake Havasu, if you've been there multiple times, you'll notice that the level of the lake never changes. And there's a reason for that, because it's an open pipe. So this is the way the water comes down to Southern California, and it passes through Lake Havasu, which is always at the same level because it's an open pipe. So what happens when you hit a mountain, you have to have a lift station, so to speak, to lift the water up and over the mountain. These are the pipes that do it, and this is what it looks like. And then it lifts it up to another lake that catches the water, and then it'll start working its way down. This is another view of a lift station there at the end of the Lake Havasu. And then this is the aqueduct after the lift station for the Colorado River. And this heads all the way down to San Diego eventually. And by contract, it has to deliver 1.4 million acre feet of water to Mexico. Here's another lift station in the desert. This particular one's interesting because it lifts the water up into a tunnel, and it travels through somewhere and it comes out. And again, it's gravity fed to its destination. This is at the 5 in the Freeway 5 and the 405 come together, I think. What's interesting here is you can see the water cascading down the open side, which doesn't happen all the time. And sometimes it's also taken by a pipe. And then they process it here at this facility, which I forget the name, and I think it's called Riverside Processing Plant. And here in Hueneme, you may have noticed there's been a lot of projects going on here on this end of town. And it's really interesting because we have great workers in our Public Works Department. And there was an abandoned pipe, and this is why institutional knowledge is very important. There's an abandoned pipe, and they're redoing our water outflow system. And nowadays, if they could take this big pipe that they connect by fusing it together, and they could drag 500-foot sections of pipe underground. So it's quite a remarkable thing that Brian Flamenco and Charles Cable and Fred Camarillo are heading up. And so this is what it looks like when they're dragging it through the old clay pipe, which has been abandoned. And like I said, they do it in 500-foot sections. So if you think about our community and any community, when you turn the water on, it's connected. It's a little pipe that's connected to a bigger pipe that's connected to a bigger pipe that's connected to a bigger pipe that's connected to a processing plant that's probably connected to either the California Aqueduct or the Colorado River. So every time you turn your water on every morning, it's an opportunity to be inspired. If you're having a bad day, bad night, wake up, you turn that water on, and it's like it should make you feel good. So hopefully from here on out, every time you brush your teeth in the morning, you'll start your day off inspired by water.
Great, thank you. That deserves a hand clap. Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Gama. We will now hear public comments not pertaining to the items on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. This process will be the same for comments pertaining to each agenda item. Madam Clerk, does anyone have any public comments?
Yes, first up we'll have Ned Branch, and then followed by Greg Ross.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, and the city manager. My name is Ned Branch. I'm the Deputy Director for the Ventura County Library System. And I came tonight to just give you an update on what's going on with your library and its reconstruction. Things are moving along very well now at this point in time. Since over a year ago, we had to close, and we had a lot of battles with insurance companies and one thing and another, but things are going much better now. We've completely replaced the sprinkler system that was in the library. The ceiling has been completely replaced. The flooring's been completely replaced. It's all been painted. By the end of the week, the bathrooms will be done. So we are looking at getting pretty close to reopening the library. There is a remodeling project going on for which I thank the city building department and city manager for getting our building permits for us to be able to commence that work. Demo started this week, and we're anticipating about a month's reconstruction, turning the old children's space into an innovation lab. So we're getting close. We will be asking to work with you folks soon to plan a grand reopening sometime in the spring, and we'll start off by talking with the city manager, and then we'll be soliciting ideas from you. And I have one more announcement, one more update. You all know that in November, Tim Fergal left to take a new position in New York. We have just now appointed a new regional librarian for the East Region who will be headquartered here at the Port Hueneme Library. Her name is Ann Hoja. She's currently the library manager for our Oak Park branch. She'll be assuming her new duties on, I believe it's March the 2nd. So just in time to help with reopening the new library. So just wanted to let you know and thank you for your patience and thank the community for their patience. Every time I've been at the library, it seems like people are always stopping by to ask, when are you going to open? When are you going to open? Well, pretty soon we'll be able to give them an exact date. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I just wanted to let you know that pretty soon we're going to have a library again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're excited about it.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Manager, Mr. Vega. My name is Greg Ross. I've lived in Ventura County for 55 years. South Oxnard for 10 years, over in the other side of the port, Silver Strand, and then now here in Port Hueneme since 2000. I'm really starting to take my gloves off. I'm very proud of this city, but yet I have this really strong feeling that for a lot of reasons, because I go to a lot of the Harbor Commission meetings, that Port Hueneme is the redheaded stepchild to the port. And Oxnard, the wind doesn't blow that way. I have proof from a website right here, Leo Correa, Point Mugu. The wind's always going from the northwest to the southeast to our town. So what do? We get pollution, we get noise, we get truckers that are constantly running through our neighborhood, not through Oxnard, through our neighborhood. We get all the bad stuff. Now I know the port does finance the city to some degree, but I gotta tell you, these photos are recent. December, November, and the smoke's always blowing our way. When I lived in Silver Strand, I never had any black soot on my screens. Here, I have black soot. So we have pollution, and so I'm going to finalize my comments here. This is a letter I sent on January 17th. I copied Mr. Vega on it. It went to every single harbor commissioner. Went to all the powers that be at the port. So Christina Beardsey, Christian Dekas, and so Mike Morrison. The crickets that I heard after I sent this, I hand-delivered it, are deafening. The port doesn't care, and it makes me angry. So maybe once in my lifetime they'll respond, but they don't. They just don't respond. So I don't really think the port is our friend, and for any of you who might feel like they are because of all the money that's involved, okay, that's fine, but they're still not our friend. The noise, the trucks, the pollution, it's not good for our city. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Maricela Hernandez.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Hello, my name is Maricela Hernandez, and I want to be brief. I have a lot of things to say, but I know it's short. I have my son who, his name is Carlos Hernandez. He's 7 years old. He attends Hueneme Elementary School. He's autistic and nonverbal who has an IEP. I'm here today because my rights were violated. My concerns are not taken seriously. My son requires the support of one-on-one. He has been eloping. He has health and having severe allergies. He has increase of sensory behaviors and aggression. There hasn't been any detailed documentation of reports at school. I presented a letter to the principal, Brandon, and the director of special education, Stephanie Barnes, on January 28th to request a letter and to meet my concerns. On January 10, I also requested another IEP. I have not heard from anybody. It's already February. They have denied my rights. Actually, on this Friday, past Friday, during dismissal, when I picked up my son, I was able to observe bruises on his forehead, starting from the hairline down to his eyebrows. There was obviously an injury present, even on the right side of his cheek. I questioned the personnel from the school. They denied that anything happened. They are currently investigating from today's conversation over the phone with Stephanie. I have not heard anything. I believe that they're ignoring my son's disability. I feel that I'm being discriminated. This is negligence of the school due to my son's disability. I reported this to the Hueneme Police Department, to the Child Protective Services as well. I have done my part. I've been requesting services for my son. They have been denied. And I'm still waiting. I'm here to advocate for my son, and I feel that I'm not taking anything, all my concerns are not taken seriously. He has been doing self-injury. He has been getting hurt, and something has to happen in order for them to give him the support that he needs.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Hernandez, just one note up front. The school board does meet in this room, but they meet on February 24th. And so this is the city of Port Hueneme's meeting. We don't have jurisdiction over the school district. So our recommendation would be to attend the school board meeting on February 24th if you're
Okay.
intending to talk to the school board representatives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we have one written public comment, and this is from Louise Kelly. Good evening, members of the council. I am here today to discuss the economic impact and public access implications of the recent decision by the Surfside 3 HOA to impose a 30-day minimum rental policy, effectively eliminating short-term rentals at properties like mine in Port Hueneme. This policy shift is of significant concern not only to property owners, but also to the city's economy, tourism sector, and longstanding public access principles protected under the California Coastal Act. Short-term rentals have played an important role in supporting local businesses and generating tax revenue. Over the past several years, short-term rental income from properties in Port Hueneme has contributed steady transient occupancy tax, TOT, payments averaging between $500 and $600 per month per rental unit. These funds directly benefit the city and its services while supporting economic growth. Visitors staying in short-term rentals frequent local restaurants, shops, and attractions, bringing consistent revenue to the community. This model of coastal access is more than an economic advantage. It aligns with the intent of the California Coastal Act to ensure that the public can enjoy the state's natural resources. Families and tourists who stay in short-term rentals often create lasting memories during their visits, whether they are enjoying the beach, celebrating milestones, or exploring the local culture. Restricting this access undermines a 40-year precedent of supporting tourism and community well-being. The recent decision by the HOA is based on legal advice suggesting that buildings with CCNRs recorded before January 1st, 1977 may be exempt from the Coastal Act short-term rental provisions. However, I seek clarification on whether this interpretation is accurate and whether there is a path to petition for an exemption that could restore short-term rental rights. Maintaining flexibility in rental policies is essential for both property owners and the city's economic health. Without the option for short-term rentals, property owners may face financial challenges that could affect property maintenance and even lead to decreased contributions to city revenue. Meanwhile, the local tourism economy could see a decline in visitor spending, affecting businesses that rely on seasonal and weekend travelers. I kindly request the council's guidance on how to proceed with the formal petition for exemption and any insights on potential solutions that balance public access, economic sustainability, and the needs of the community. Thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to your support in preserving a vibrant, accessible, and economically sustainable coastal community in Port Hueneme. Thanks, Louise Kelly, and that will conclude public comment.
Thank you, City Manager.
Mayor, if I could just note, we'll respond to Ms. Kelly to let her know we are currently planning to bring the item requested by council to discuss short-term rentals to our next meeting, February 18th. We are working on that report, and that was the request was essentially a survey of what other coastal communities, particularly near us, have done and what some of the benefits and drawbacks to short-term rentals. So we'll let Ms. Kelly know that that will be discussed at that time. And I think in general that topic, since it's not on the agenda tonight, my recommendation is we do discuss the short-term rental topic at that February 18th meeting. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll move on to the agenda approval. May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We'll move to the conflict of interest. Does any member of the council have any conflicts of interest to disclose for any of the items on the agenda? Great. We'll move on to the presentations. We will now move to the presentation, starting with the recognizing J.R. Lesher. I think we'll go to the city manager first.
So actually, I have a certificate, but I believe Councilmember
Gama.
Gama had requested the item, so I believe he's planning to speak.
Okay.
Thank you. Principal Bravo constantly reminds me that it's academics first at Hueneme High School. So before we get into JR's amazing accomplishment in athletics, I want to talk about the fact that JR is a standout student and a great community member. Teachers and coaches alike describe him as a pleasure to work with because of his eagerness to learn. He possesses a 4.0 GPA, and he is excelling in multiple AP courses. Is that true? Yeah. He demonstrates the drive and determination in the classroom as he does on the cross-country field course. So J.R. Lesher is arguably one of the fastest distance runners to ever come out of the Oxnard Plain. He lives on the Navy base in the city of Port Hueneme. His father is in the Navy, and he moved here from Missouri. And as you know, for a young teenager to move across country to a crazy place called California, it could be quite traumatic, and sometimes it's not met with success. But JR has embraced our community, and he embraced Hueneme High School, and he continues his work ethic that he did out there in the cold of Missouri. A natural leader, JR sets the standard through his actions. From the moment he joined Hueneme cross-country team in the summer of 2023, he elevated the team with his unwavering commitment and discipline. Always the first to arrive and the last to leave, JR never cuts corners or settles for less than his best. This relentless work ethic propelled him to the extraordinary success during the 2024 season of being the state champion. Some of his highlights are he set the record for the fastest 3-mile race, 14 minutes and 14 seconds, tied the course record at Lake Casitas cross country course, set Hueneme High and Ventura County record at the Mount San Antonio College cross country course, 2024 Citrus League cross country champion, first team All Citrus Coast League, 2024 Ventura County cross country champion, first team All Ventura County honors, third place CIF Southern Section Division II championship, first team All CIF Southern Section cross country Division II, CIF Division II state cross country champion, first team All CIF, recorded the 17th fastest time in high school history, Nike cross country national qualifier. So it's a great honor for our city council to present you with a certificate of recognition. And we really love the fact that you've come to our community and embraced our community, and Coach Petrie and Athletic Director Gallegos come on up with, and his family as well. And we're so pleased to have you in our community, so pleased to have you working hard, and so pleased to be making Principal Bravo proud of your academic success. Thank you.
Have a couple of words if you would like also.
Yeah, thank you for the recognition, and this meeting means a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again, Councilor Mangama, and the council and everyone here. It's been an honor, coaching here at Hueneme High and seeing how far both JRs come and the teams come. And I love to say it's a great place to run here in Port Hueneme. We love running down here. So thank you all again. Appreciate it.
All right, City Council, want to say thank you for this honor bestowed on JR. He's definitely a pleasure to work with. I said this at our school council, one of our board meetings. He's the type of person that only looks down on a student only to pick him up. So he definitely leads by example, and we are blessed to have him in our community. And he can probably tell you how many miles he's logged up and down the beaches at Port Hueneme. Open up here. Many times he's been putting a lot of miles in, so he's definitely everything, all the accolades that were mentioned by Councilman Mangama, he's definitely earned it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure.
Council, I would just like to add that, as Councilman Gama said, that so often that when, these especially teens come to a new community like this from such a big change, they don't excel. They don't really succeed the way they could. Coach Petrie at one point said that this school and this community has a small town vibe for a big city. And I just want to say I've always felt really welcome as far as how they did it. Director Gallegos, Coach Petrie, the whole team has really kind of made us part of the Viking family to the extent they could.
Come on, family.
Come
on, family.
Police Explorer to that list of just always recruiting.
Really? Shoulder, yeah. There's tall people in front.
Hold on.
See you on the beach again.
Congratulations.
Take care. Thank you so much. We'll see you on the beach again, hopefully. All right.
USC.
You're trying to draft her to UCLA? Thank you all.
For our next presentation, I'd like to call Desiree Turan. Is there a Desiree Turan? Okay. On behalf of the Coastal Keepers, while she is making her way up, will Councilmember Hernandez read the proclamation?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. This proclamation is about World Wetlands Day, February 2nd, 2025. And it goes like this. Whereas World Wetlands Day is a global awareness campaign that gives voice to wetlands around the globe, and whereas on February 2nd, 1971, the Convention on Wetlands was adopted as an international treaty and was the first of the modern global multilateral environmental agreements, that the only one devoted to a specific ecosystem, wetlands. And whereas today the convention has a global membership of 172 countries, officially known as contracting parties, and whereas World Wetlands Day is celebrated every February 2nd since it was established in 1997, and whereas World Wetlands Day is supported by the United Nations, where the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution in 2021 establishing February 2nd as World Wetlands Day, inviting all 193 UN member states to observe the day, and whereas the wetlands theme for 2025 is protecting wetlands for our common future, spotlighting how all aspects of human well-being are tied to the health of the world's wetlands, physically, mentally, and environmentally. Elucidates how interconnected wetlands and human life have been throughout history, and underscores the critical need for human stewardship of the world's wetlands. And whereas wetlands sustain life and are central to human well-being by providing clean water, food security and nutritional variety, clean air, medicines, climate stabilization, protection against extreme weather, recreational opportunities, jobs, and positively impacts mental well-being. And whereas wetlands are the Earth's most threatened ecosystem, and World Wetlands Day increases global understanding of how much wetlands do for humanity, and that we must care, nurture, and support them for a sustainable future. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Port Hueneme does hereby recognize February 2nd, 2025 as World Wetlands Day, and encourages all to value and steward our wetlands, proclaimed this third day of February 2025. And I want to put in a special thank you for being here today, representing Coastal Keepers. Coastal Keepers has done a wonderful job in our community, working on our wetlands, keeping our coasts clean. And I understand that you were out on Sunday doing some cleanup along with Assemblyman Bennett's office. Yes, thank you. Do you want to step up to the mic, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to say on behalf of Coastal Keepers, thank you for presenting us with this proclamation. And I also want to thank the community and all the volunteers that support what we're trying to do. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do all that we're doing. And we're excited to do even more for the wetlands, for the environment, for the generations to come. So just thank you for this proclamation.
Thank you, and we appreciate all the work you do. Would you like to come up for a picture here? And do you have anybody with you from Coastal Keepers? Come on up. Yeah, right here. Here, I'll just hand this over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We will now recess from the City Council meeting and call to order the Housing Authority regular meeting. It is now 7 o'clock. Madam Clerk, please take roll call.
Member Blackwell?
Here.
Member Brown?
Present.
Member Gama?
Here.
Member Hernandez? Here. Member Perez?
Here.
Vice Chair Lopez?
Here.
And Chair McQueen-Lejeune.
Here. We will now hear public comments. Madam Clerk, are there any public comments?
No public comments for Housing Authority.
Great. We will now consider items on the Housing Authority consent calendar, which will be enacted in one motion unless an authority member has a request to remove an item for discussion. May I have a motion and a second?
Move to approve?
Second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please take a vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have no business items. Any authority members have a report or comments they'd like to make? Or future agenda items?
Not at this time, thank you.
No. Great, thank you. The Port Hueneme Housing Authority will adjourn to its next regular meeting scheduled for March 3rd, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. And we will now reconvene to the City Council regular meeting. The time is now 7:01. We will now consider the items on the consent calendar, which will be enacted in one motion unless a council member has a request to remove an item for discussion.
Move approval of consent agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Great. Okay, business item, preliminary 3-year budget forecast. City Manager?
Thank you. We scheduled this preliminary 3-year budget forecast fairly early in the year and early in the process, really with the idea and the intent being to start thinking proactively about our upcoming budget. Our budget, typically, we adopt our budget sometime in June to start in July for the fiscal year that then runs July 1st to June 30th. And so this year we want to try to have a longer, transparent process where we plan to have multiple conversations about the budget, and we plan to really look at the priorities of the city and try to build that into the budget. So today, with starting with looking ahead at the next 3 years and the forecast for what we see over those 3 years, and essentially what we see if we adopt a sort of status quo budget, and sort of starting with what that looks like, and then from there, over the next few months, working to build in the modifications or the adjustments that we will need to work through over the next 5 months. And so I think for us, the thought is when we start talking about budget, it's important to start by looking at our long-term financial health to help guide us on the decisions we need to make now and into the future. So we want to start today with this preliminary 3-year budget forecast. Something we had been working on for a while was trying to do a longer-term forecast. And so we want to walk through what that looks like. And just one caveat to keep in mind is, things change a lot in a year, 2 years, 3 years, or even 6 months. So this is right now our forecast of what we expect the next 3 years. But that is going to be something that we continue to adjust, or that we may get new data on in a few months as we get some of our sales tax, property tax, other receipts back. But it's our forecast at this time for the next 3 years of what our budget would look like as a starting point. And we'll go from there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Finance Director, Lupe Acero, to walk us through that forecast.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, members of the public, staff. This evening, as City Manager noted, I want to share with you our forecast. It's a 3-year forecast. The city has not, in the past, generated a forecast. We typically do the 2-year budget. We update the budget. Forecast is very important. A lot of cities are doing them now. Some of them have always done it. I think a lot of cities, with everything that's going on with the economy, are starting to generate longer-term forecasts. So the forecast is different than the budget. The budget is very static, is done in more detail. We sit with the departments, we present it to council. This is an estimate based on what we know, based on what we've seen, based on what we expect is gonna happen, and I'm gonna go through those inputs, and I'm gonna go through what is really impacting this forecast that I'm gonna present to you. And then going forward, we're gonna start working on, we're gonna present to you the mid-year budget, which is this year's mid-year, any updates to that, and then we'll start working on the actual budget, which is gonna be presented to council in May. And so we'll have a lot of different meetings coming up, but as city manager pointed out, this is a forecast. So the purpose of the forecast is to really take a look at long-term and see where we would be if we didn't do anything about any of the inputs, right? As city manager noted, and we did the 2-year budget, which was the fiscal year 23-24, 24-25, presented that to council. And that was a balanced budget at the time. In order to balance that budget, we went back a couple times with department heads and made some adjustments, and we brought forth a balanced budget to city council. This forecast is preparing us to identify longer-term challenges, which we're gonna have to address in order to maintain financially viable as a city. It is going to help evaluate current and future fiscal condition of the city and really set us up to start planning for the budget. I'm gonna go through some of the local and economic conditions that are really impacting this forecast and the numbers that I'm gonna present to you. So interest rates have continued to go up. So that's putting a lot of pressure on the consumer. Consumer confidence is down. We get reports from HDL, our consultant, on historical reports on what has transpired in the last quarter versus the same quarter the prior year. And we really see consumer confidence just declining. The credit card interest rates are high, so people are not charging as much on their credit card. People are looking for value. Restaurant prices have increased. Menu prices have increased because minimum wage has gone up. A lot of restaurants are offering happy hours or discounted hours, and people are going to those. But at the same time, it's generating a lower average check, which in turn impacts city taxes because the city gets lower taxes from that. Consumers are really focusing on what's essential. So some of the non-essential goods, like even vehicles now, we're seeing auto and transportation decline. And I'll talk a little bit about how that impacts the city with transaction taxes. And then locally, the big one is the cannabis revenue. We've mentioned it in other meetings. We are seeing a huge impact from when it's back in 2022 to where we are now. And even now, when we look at the quarterly gross sales receipts from the businesses are down. So that's really, I think, market saturation, competition, and that is impacting the city in 2 different ways. So it's the 5% tax that they pay towards the general fund revenue, and it's also the sales tax. So the city's not collecting sales taxes on those revenues. And those are the large, for now, and as city manager mentioned, we're gonna continue to have meetings with HDL in the next couple months and update the forecast and bring you updates as we find more information and more updated information. So we look at the sales taxes. Sales taxes make up 24% of the general fund revenue. If so this has 3 components because I wanted to highlight. The city receives 2.5% for every sales tax dollar from sales taxes. The 1% is what we call the Bradley Burns tax. And then the city has 2 transaction taxes. One is the Measure W, which is 0.5%, and the other one is Measure U, which is 1%. And so that's 2.5%. As you can see, the Measure U is 1%, same as the sales tax, But the Measure U dollars are more because those are transaction taxes. So when people are buying goods outside of the city, but they reside in the city still gets that tax. In 2024, these are actuals, unaudited, but they're pretty accurate at this point. The total taxes were $6.9 million, so almost hovering $7 million. And the budget, we have 6.6. And then in the forecast, that was decreased by 4% in 2026, and then 2% thereafter. So we're looking at 6.3 million and then 6.2. And again, these are very likely going to change based on, once we look at the actual trends, we might have to adjust these up or down.
Lupe, on that point real quick, I just wanted to note that, so we do contract with HDL sales tax consultants, which most cities in the county and probably at this point most in the state do. They're sort of the experts on sales taxes, and then because they work for so many cities, they really do sort of see the big picture and what's happening across the state. And so at first glance, if you look at this chart, it may look like we're being conservative because we're sort of reducing our expectations for sales tax compared to what last year looked like, but it's also because we've had regular meetings with HDL, including last week, I believe was one, where HDL is telling us that they are seeing this trend play out already. They're seeing reductions across the state, but even more so locally. So I want to note that. I don't know if you have.
Yes, and to that point, when we bring the mid-year for 2025, so this is based on the adopted budget, we will, if we need to, might reduce that number based on the most recent information.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
So I remember I was at a budget meeting with the county recently, and I think they showed the revenues on a decline as well. So do they get the same information from the same consultants, basically? And it's not just us, it's the state as a whole and county government and municipality.
Yeah, without knowing if the county is specifically one of their customers, most agencies seem to be at this point, and they're probably getting the same data. And a lot of cities right now have gone back to their councils, or the county to their board in the last few months to kind of revise their budgets to be more pessimistic, I guess would be the word. It's the trend happening. I think for us, I think the update we just got from HDL last week showed like a 2% decline around us, but the challenge for us is our decline actually is a little more severe than all the other agencies. I think we're at 10% decline. And again, we mentioned it in that last slide, but it's because of the cannabis tax.
Yeah, the food and drugs, so they provide, for those municipalities that contract with HDL, they provide us information in different, by groups. So food and drug is one segment. That one, Port Hueneme is down significantly because cannabis is in there. Other cities may be down in like autos and transportations because they have a lot of dealerships, for example. But they're seeing the impact in different categories and to different extent, depending on the city, the volume. We certainly are seeing it in a little bit in restaurants, in some areas. Like I said, people are going to the discounted, the fast foods and trying to get more value. But certainly the cannabis has been the big one for us.
Question, go ahead.
So in 2023, when we were forecasting 2024, and then were we off our forecast? With the actual that actually happened in 2024? In 2023 when we're forecasting?
No, not in 24, but I think we are going to be off in 2025. I can, based on what I have, and then we'll have to do one more meeting before we bring the mid-year, but things have really softened up more recently.
I think a simple way of saying it is I think we budgeted conservatively, expecting some drop, and then in the first year we had about that drop, where what felt conservative a year earlier ended up being realistic the next year. And then unfortunately, I think with the cannabis market in particular, it dropped even more than a conservative estimate would have been. So over the 2025, we expect it will be a little lower than even what we had conservatively budgeted.
And I think one thing to remember in 2023, we were just coming out of COVID. I mean, things were really, people were spending money. People got a lot, the stimulus checks, and we still hadn't seen that dip. So when we did the budget, and that's why we do the mid-years and the revised budget, and but it was there were a lot of unknowns and a lot of, if you will, artificial spikes in certain areas,
Thank you.
And then the other slide I have here, just to illustrate the cannabis revenue. So you can see in 2022, the city received almost $3 million in revenue, and that's the 5%. So that does not include the sales tax, because the sales tax associated with cannabis revenue is in the other slide with the sales. So this is just the 5%. We did start seeing, 23, 24, with competition, competitors opening up in the neighboring cities, some impact. Part of it is, it's a combination, market saturation, and then also the economy. But we're seeing significant decreases. This is one where in our revised budget, we have 1.9 million, and it is very likely that when we come back with a mid-year update, that's gonna be decreased. We're projecting 1.5, and that's pretty much when we annualize what we're seeing from the different businesses. It's gonna be somewhere around there, 1.5, 1.4 million. And the one area that is continues to grow a little bit, not as significant as in the past, is property taxes because of Prop 13. So that we have a 2% increase in the forecast for property taxes. And this one can vary depending on if there's a change of ownership for a big commercial property, for example, in Port Hueneme, and we've seen that. And that was in 2024, so it really spikes up the property taxes when a large property exchanges hands. But there has been a slowdown also in home sales because, again, interest rates. So that, but still we get the 2%, so that's the property tax. So that one, in the projection, there's a 2% increase. And again, we'll revisit that because we also contract with HDL for property tax, and they provide us all of the information. This one's a little bit harder because it's based on who's gonna sell their house and for how much, right? But this one still has an increase of 2%.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just curious as to, there appears to be close to a 700,000 difference in property taxes from 23 to 24.
Yeah, we had a large, I can't identify the property, but there was a large commercial property that exchanged hands. So changes of ownership, because they reassess the property. So that will create spikes like that, like one-time spikes.
Yeah, so property tax typically, this chart actually shows kind of exactly how property tax works is if there's a lot of sales of property, there can be a bigger spike because all the properties that are being sold get reassessed.
Mm-hmm.
But in years where there aren't a lot of sales, you're only seeing like that 2% max increase, which is almost exactly what we sort of expect to see. But I think people see it right now as we're in a weird spot with the housing market where I think houses, the value is there, but nobody is selling them.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're not going to get the new value of a property. You're just going to get the little percentage increase.
Where do the property taxes go in our budget?
So property taxes are general fund revenue, so it's just general fund.
Mm-hmm. Mayor, thank you. Ms. Acero, what do we attribute the increase in the forecast to? So we see it begin to increase for 2025, 26, 27?
That's the
What's that
Prop
forecast based?
13. So there's always that every year your property taxes go up, not more than 2%. So it's
a
the 2%.
I see.
Yeah.
2%
Okay,
increase.
thank
Yeah.
you.
And so this really highlights the changes the major changes that are in the projection right now or in the forecast. No changes were made to any other revenue line items. We will make changes as we generate the budget. But right now, these were the ones that clearly stand out that where we needed to adjust for this forecast. And on the expenditure side, again, this is general fund expenditures. We are seeing increases, cost of living, of inflation, and so 3% is what's in the forecast for fiscal year 26, and then the following 2 years, 2%, and that's for operating cost. And again, once we go through budget, we'll go through each line item and identify if we believe that those are going to increase in which line items. Salaries and benefits, that's a tough one, but we do have some dollars in there for cost increases. It's medical, pension. I have a separate line for pension because pension right now, it's a significant cost to the city, and we don't have the actuarial reports just yet. And so the dollars, I just want to mention that the dollars that are in the forecast are the same as what we're paying now. So it's almost $5 million is what the city pays right now for pension costs for all the employees. And that's made up of two different components. That's the normal cost, so that is the percentage of payroll. So that one, as payroll increases, then that cost goes up. And then there's the unfunded liability, an annual payment. The city prepays that every year. And we make that minimum payment every year for the unfunded liability. And I have the next.
Yeah, Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. You said in the beginning of your presentation that we've never done a forecast before. Was that correct?
In the last 5 years, we have not.
So my recollection, I would expect that a forecast is pretty important, especially around the time where there's going to be significant increase in expenditures. For instance, around contract negotiations where we're giving raises to employees and our budget goes up significantly. Why was there not a forecast done around the time that we were determining contract negotiations?
That's a great question, and I think we're in a different state of the economy right now. The last negotiations were in 2022. Yeah, so what we did at the time was calculate the dollars. Yes, there was a lot of detail that was done behind the scenes to calculate the impact and what if scenarios, but no long-term forecast was done at the time.
But wouldn't that be important when we're looking at employee costs are going up? They get a percentage every year of cost of living raises. New employees come in, they get bigger benefits. Wouldn't that be important? I forecast every time I go out and make a big purchase. For instance, I'm about to make a car purchase. So I'm looking at whether I'm going to be able to afford this car in the next 5 years. My husband's going to be retiring. Can we afford this on his fixed budget? Wouldn't it be important to forecast long-term when we're doing significant raises like that?
Yeah, I think it's important to forecast at any time, really, even in the good times or bad times. You always want to forecast and have a long-term range plan of what if scenarios.
That would have been helpful around the time that we were making decisions on whether when we're giving raises to employees, what it's going to look like in the next 5 years, if we can afford that, if our city's going to be able to maintain that.
Yeah, that's the thought process today, and I understand the question about the past, but the thought process that we're trying to work towards is we are seeing economic headwinds. We are about to go through a 2-year budget process. We are about to go through labor negotiations, all of those things. So it's important for us to see the whole, and when I say us, all of us, including the council and the staff and everybody, the public, to see the whole picture and to know the whole situation, so we can't make decisions in a vacuum, So that is the process that we're going to work towards leading up to that May-June budget adoption period.
Great. Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Gama.
So I recall a couple years ago, I know that we had a actuarial study for the unfunded liability, and I recall seeing a projection of the payments, and I think after 11 years, they would start to go down. So I know we're still in the increase right now. And I know that interest rates and rate of return plays a really big portion of that evaluation. So have we looked at the prior study, and then have we conservatively loaded it? And do we have any idea the current interest rate struggles and the rate of return from CalPERS? Is our unfunded liability payment due to not explode, but go up more so than we anticipate?
That's another thing that's important to look at long term, because one of the points you made is that it changes year to year based on how the stock market does, how their investments do. And so, one of the jokes for us that have to figure this out is if you have a good year and the costs actually go down in a year, you just wait for the next year to be equally bad to offset the good. It's almost like, okay, we had a good year, so expect next year to be bad, and vice versa. So year to year, it's almost like it's one of those things where you don't look at that year to year. You look at that as long term, and over the next 10 years, what's the trend look like? And every year it might go it might go up or down, but what's the trend line on that?
Right.
So it is something that we need to keep a focus on. We have our GovInvest program, and I'll let Lupe speak to that, and that does provide us updated information. But I think my long-winded explanation is to say that's really one of those things you look at long-term versus just where cities get into trouble, I think, is they have a year where they say, oh, the returns were really good, so we can
we had
contribute less
we had
this
that
year.
2 years
And-
ago.
Yeah,
right?
and then the next year it's bad, and then you have to contribute more, and then you're kind of back, in a hole. So for us, it's looking at those long-term trends. Do you want to say anything about GovInvest or any of that?
Sure. So that kind of takes me to this slide, and I'll talk about GovInvest. So this is what we know right now, is that our unfunded liability is roughly $40 million. We know our annual costs are almost $5 million a year, and we're 70% funded. And so now this is based on the last actuarial report, and what the new challenges and the unknown is investment returns. So if returns continue to do good, it's going to help our funding. We're going to percentage. The normal cost will go up as a percentage of payroll. That's pretty much a given, because if payroll goes up, percentage goes up. And the employer contributions are expected to continue to rise through about 2031, 2032. And that's where a lot of the classic employees retire, the PEPRA employees who contribute towards their pension kind of cross the line. So then we start seeing that decrease, which is what Councilmember Gama was explaining. So that's, and then as far as GovInvest, we do contract with GovInvest, who gets the information before the actuarial reports are published, and they help us. They basically have a formula, and they'll plug in all the information, especially the returns. The returns are really what's going to impact a lot of the unfunded liability, because if our funding percentage goes up, then our unfunded is less and our contribution is less. And so that is also, I actually just got an email today asking for a meeting date, so we're going to be meeting with them in the near future.
I do have a question. And I think it's for you, James, City Manager.
Sure.
Have we thought about a pensions stabilization policy where in the good years where anything over 15% in any of the funds that we could actually invest into a pension obligations?
Yeah.
Just so that we can get a jump start on some of these unfunded liabilities.
Yeah, that's a goal and a really good idea and a really good practice. On our next item, the council goals, one of our goals in particular is to update our financial policies and look at ensure we're following best practices on financial policies. And that's something that we definitely should work towards and strive for. last year, for the first time, we started a CIP reserve fund. So it, you know, we knew we had a few needs that we needed, and we knew, as we saw the cannabis revenues dropping, we knew we needed to kind of focus on addressing at least as much as we could of the needs. So we prioritized the CIP reserve fund, but the next thing we wanted to look at was pension-related policies and potentially a pension stabilization fund or a pre-funding trust. Those are things we should talk about and do. I think the challenge for us is going to be that, as you'll see in this presentation, the current forecast doesn't show extra money the next 3 years, which makes it a challenge. But I think it's something still, and this is one of my philosophies, is if we should be adopting these policies now, and like exactly as you described, is, and then the first year you have where you do have you know, any sort of surplus, you're prioritizing putting it towards the things that we need to do. So so I think that's on our list, and we'll mention that when we get to the next item too.
May I ask one more little question?
One more question.
Little question. So those are good alternatives, but I just want to make sure, because I do believe I know what your stance is on pension obligation bonds, and I don't think that's part of the mix that we're going to look at. Is that correct?
It's not something we have looked at this time. So.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Back to you. Yeah.
So this slide really is very telling because it really tells the forecast based on the inputs that I just covered. The revenues for general fund going forward in the next 3 years are not sufficient to cover the operating expenses. There would be an operating deficit each year. Starting with fiscal year 25-26, the deficit would be $1 million, and growing into almost 1.9 in fiscal year 27 and 2.5 in fiscal year 28. And then layered on that would be the CIP. And I just want to make a note here, these capital improvement project dollars that are reflected here are based on the projects that were approved when the 5-year CIP was approved. So those are just taken from there. We've already started having meetings with staff, city manager, to really look at those projects and reprioritize and really take a look at which ones we really think are going to be completed or we can afford to complete in the next couple years. But with putting in what was approved, after CIP, you can see that that deficit just grows substantially. In fiscal year 25-26 will be 2.3 million, 3.6 the following year, and then almost $4 million in 2028.
If I can just add to this, to one of the statistics in the staff report that I thought is sort of important to highlight here is that our personnel costs are about 70% of total operating expenditures. So that line item there, where it's 28.7 million in 25-26, 29.3 million in fiscal year 27, and 29.9, almost 30 million in fiscal year 28. 70% of those costs are personnel costs. So when you're starting with that and realizing that that's personnel, it doesn't leave a lot of other things. And so when you start looking at the other things and trying to see where you could reduce a couple $1 million, it becomes very difficult. I think Mrs. Sarah just said it, but one of the first things we looked at is that capital improvement project category, and we've already had a couple meetings really trying to look at that, and it is one of those conversations now where, you know, when you start out, it's what do we want, and then I think up till now we had that CIP review last year, and we said, okay, let's take it back to what do we need, because we can't afford everything we want. And I think this next conversation coming up as the next step, the CIP review, it's going to shift to what can we afford. It's not what we want. It's not what we need. It's what we can afford. So, so that's going to be the next step in the process, is looking closely at the capital improvement projects and really narrowing those down. So Sorry.
At the risk of sounding negative, what if we just froze the CIP projects?
Yeah, so there's some CIP projects that are funded by other funds. So those, I don't want to make a general statement, but generally that means that some of those projects can continue without impacting the general fund. And then there's a couple projects, I think, as we did our first read through it, there's a few projects where our recommendation is going to be that we sort of shift to if we can apply for some grants and we can get this grant funded, then let's do it. But if not, we might have to postpone it. So I guess the good news is I don't think it'll have to be just a full freeze of all CIP, but I think it's going to be looking at it very closely and really deciding which ones are the priorities. So
Could we get a just an evaluation of general fund CIP versus the enterprise funds? That would be really helpful. I think.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll provide that. I think we were looking at doing like a CIP review about a month from now and digging into that. So.
Great, back to you, Ms. Arceo. Let's try to make it through the slides, and then we're going to go back to questions. So,
Alrighty, so what this next slide is really showing is what the estimated unassigned fund balance is projected to be at the end of this fiscal year. Based on the adopted budget, we're projecting unassigned fund balance to be just under $7.5 million. And if the scenarios that I presented with those deficits came to reality in the next 3 years, it would basically be funded by the unassigned fund balance, and it would not be enough. It will deplete the unassigned fund balance before the end of the fiscal year 27-28. And again, these are assumptions. I think some of the assumptions, as you guys probably would agree, is a lot of the sales impacts and all those are reality, but we'll have to go through line item by line item when we look at the budget as far as operating expenses, salaries and benefits operating. We don't have in the budget right now, in this forecast, I should say, it's all positions are fully funded, so we typically do have a vacancy factor. We haven't built a vacancy factor. We might have to go that route and say, okay, what positions are we not going to fill for the entire year? Do we build a vacancy factor for a couple months? And those are the conversations that we're going to have with the department, city manager, and bring back to council. And again, we'll be working with the departments and making adjustments. And we're going to have workshops certainly before we bring you the final budget for adoption. And then, as city manager mentioned, the CIP will be a significant component of really taking a look at that and looking at what projects could potentially be funded by grants and or delayed at this point. That is my presentation. I'll take any other questions.
great, thank you. Any more questions, council members? No?
I do.
Councilman Hernandez.
So thank you for the presentation, and I'm looking forward to hearing what staff will bring back to council when we start discussing our future budget. Besides capital improvement and looking at vacancies, what other methods and grants, what other methods or cost-saving measures, cost-cutting measures will you be looking at? Are we going to be talking about hiring freezes? Are we going to talk about attrition?
I think we're going to focus on at least the first round, in my perspective, and I'll let city manager provide his perspective, is looking at areas where we may not, even this is CIP, but just capital in general. If we're going to buy a piece of equipment, do we really need it? Can we repair it? That would be an area. Contract services, and really asking, and we have before, and the departments have really looked at their departments and resources, but really optimizing resources and how can we be more efficient with the resources that we have. So that would be my perspective, and what I would do first is just go through and do that before we take any other measures.
Yeah, and I would just add a couple of points. One is, I think we're looking at all those operational type expenses, and that's something we plan to bring back. This is sort of a preliminary early look ahead at the next 3 years. So one of the things, and we met with our staff, we had an all hands meeting to sort of talk about this, is one of the things is this isn't a final budget. This is the first draft of the budget. It's the first draft. If we don't change anything and we just keep doing things the way we do them, where do we land in 3 years? And I think what we see is we need to start making some adjustments, but it's the intent of doing these is to be able to have the time to make those adjustments and to be able to work together. And we talked to our staff today about, any idea is welcome. No idea is too small. If a staff member has an idea about, well, we had it in the books to buy this new piece of equipment, but now, knowing that, the budget is a challenge, we can get 3 more years out of it, then it's time to have some of those conversations. And then I think the other big one that I think we're going to have some conversations coming up at council is looking at some revenue generation ideas and proposals. Things like we have not, we talked about this recently at council, but we haven't raised our wastewater rates in, I believe it was 12 years, our trash rates in over 12 years. And those, it's great that we were able to keep our costs low and not raise those rates for longer than most of the cities around us. But those are things that there's a reason why every other city has raised their rates in that period. It's because the costs went up, and at some point those rates have to go up, or else we're not recovering those costs. And we have to look at things like user fees and those types of things too. So I think at this point, the idea with today is really just framing the issue, because over the next 5 or 6 months, we're going to probably bring back several items to discuss, and we want everybody to know the full big picture as we bring those back, because it may have been something where in the past it was, well, we don't need to do that yet. And so we want to show what the next 3 years look like, so we know what we need to start working on now.
So just one more question. The 2.292 million that we estimate being a deficit in for 25 and 26, what's the percentage of that from the overall budget? I didn't want to bring out my phone and do the calculations. But
It's probably about, I'm doing it off the top of my head, so maybe 8%, something along those lines.
okay. All right.
And
Thank
so,
you.
yeah, and that year, that percentage-wise is not too bad. The years following it start getting over 10%. So long-term, it's a challenge.
I think in my experience with budget cuts over the years has been putting the departments through an exercise. If you had to cut your budget by 10%, what would you cut?
Yep, exactly.
And letting them really think through that process.
Yeah.
Councilmember Gama.
I think there's a lot of nuance here, and I don't know if it's possible, but when we talk about not buying a piece of equipment, well, if it's in the enterprise funds, right?
Correct.
Doesn't matter.
Yep.
Because the enterprise funds are doing better than the general fund. So I think moving forward, I think what we need to do is be able to talk about the general fund as it is by itself, and categorize expenditures as they hit the general fund. So when we talk about labor costs, the enterprise fund for solid waste, right? So labor costs are paid for out of the enterprise fund, correct?
So there are some that are charged to enterprise funds. We're talking today, we're trying to focus on the general fund today. So we aren't talking about the enterprise funds. So that 70% of personnel costs is 70% of our general fund budget.
Right, but when we say, let's not buy a piece of equipment, if it's a new trash truck,
right,
that would be a part of the enterprise fund,
it'd be
right?
Enterprise fund.
And I think for those, the city manager mentioned that for enterprise funds, the exercise still needs to happen because of the rates that haven't increased.
No, I understand
So-
that, but But
those,
the general fund is what we're trying to focus on right
Correct.
now.
There's general fund equipment and
Right.
then there's enterprise
Mhm.
equipment.
Okay.
So when we just said, you know, we're going through the exercise of asking every department to look at these, right now we're talking about general funds, so we're asking them to look at those. But yes, we're also doing the same exercise with the enterprise funds. And because the enterprise funds haven't been increased for a very long time, we are going to need to talk about some adjustments there as well.
So if-
whether that's the rate increase, which has to go to the voters and takes a
And
period of time.
that's some of the nuance I'm talking about. So if we do pass a rate increase on water or trash, does it benefit the general fund?
Yes.
In what way?
Because if the enterprise fund can't support itself, then the general fund has to subsidize the enterprise fund.
Okay.
And I would say,
but we're not at that point right now, right?
I would say we aren't doing it today, but part of why we're doing this outlook is because we're not far from it.
I don't think we've done it in the time that I've been on council. I don't know.
the water fund had a study, the other fund, the solid waste, and they have not had a rate study in more than 10 years. And so that's really what needs to happen with the enterprise funds, because they're self-funded. They receive their cost recovery, right? So in a rate study, they take those type of items into consideration, any capital going forward, cost of operating, the operating cost, and then it's the third party who does the analysis and recommends the rates so that those enterprise funds also maintain viable, because they're have a fund balance as well, and those fund balances have been depleting in the last couple years.
Great. Any other questions?
I just had one more. The general fund 25-26 to 26-27 had a big drop. I don't know if this is a slide I saw it on, but
Like was it one of the revenues specifically?
yeah, and I was just wondering, is there a specific reason for that, or is it just the way the numbers?
The drop from 25-26 to 26-27 specifically, like the expenditures, is because it builds on that. So if we assume a 2% increase in the first year, then the next year, it's 2% on top of that, the new base. So that's why it looks worse in 27. So if costs go up next year by 2%, then if we were assuming they're gonna go up the following year, another 2%.
It's compounding.
So it's compounding, yeah.
Question,
Member
yeah.
Pro Tem.
So when we have we discussed, like, when we have new hires, maybe have a different blended system where, you know, their contributions are a little higher so that we kind of offset some of the pension costs? Has that been discussed?
So for cities, that is essentially in place. It's there was pension reform on January 1st, 2013, I think it was, and essentially any new employee hired after that date contributes more to their pension.
50%, so the city pays 50% and the employee pays 50%. And those are the PEPRA employees, and then the classic employees is where the city pays 100%. And that's the reason that where the pension costs are expected or projected that they'll go down in the year 2031, because there'll be more new employees under the new
more
plan.
of a
the new
blended
reform.
system.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, so that's where the long-term outlook is a little different from the short-term with pensions, because there should be a tipping point coming up in a few years.
Okay. Any more questions? If not, Madam Clerk, are there any public comments?
We do have a public comment written from Dulce Setterfield. Agenda item 8 features a preliminary forecast. Previewing it on the city website, I felt curious about the sales tax content. Please embrace a more granular look at tax revenue drivers and influencers going forward. Shortly after the COVID Stay Safe at Home commencement almost 5 years ago, Hueneme Family Pharmacy was shuttered. Owners abruptly relocated to Oxnard. I did not loyally follow, but other customers may have opted for Oxnard. The wooden building on Hueneme Road did not attract a new tenant. Also vacant for years after an early COVID closure, a neighborhood 97-cent store at the Beachport Center. Prolonged vacancies can erode expected sales tax revenues. Decreased revenue from 2 retail closures is tiny compared to a loss of a larger business a couple blocks eastbound on Wainimi Road, corner of Surfside Drive. Port Wainimi Marine Supply left our city during the pandemic. Industrial customers across the SoCal region rely on that family-owned business year-round. A sizable chunk of annual sales tax revenue shifted from our city coffers to Oxnard's. Our city sports a still empty building on a high visibility corner. My guess about that relocation to Oxnard was wrong. A city employee explained the move out happened when the property owner figured leasing to a cannabis business would prove lucrative. Years later, no cannabis player or other commercial interest has yet occupied that building. Question: how large of a cumulative revenue dent might be attributed to Cannabis Mirage? Nearby retail offerings on the naval base attract eligible folks. A municipal revenue forecast may benefit from learning if the quantity of base shopping is expanding. Questions: are increasing numbers of base eligible shoppers settling in our city and vicinity? Or is the base shopper head count plus the total amount of base spending trending downward? The item 8 pillar ends with financial excellence. I don't know what measurable inputs can add up to an excellence determination as opposed to lesser thresholds, such as mediocrity or an economic cliff. Examples I've shared regarding vacated properties illustrate tax revenue shrinkage within a single 3-block stretch in just one neighborhood. Not a cliff, but far from excellence, I reckon. I'm not calling for hyper-focus on locations I've highlighted. Examples are meant to spur inclusion of optimal levels of granularity within ongoing fact-finding analysis and next steps. There's much more to discover before that elusive pillar of economic excellence can become believable as an achievable reality, not overreach, mirage, or vague rhetoric. Let's not forget how unlicensed food and beverage vendors swarmed public sidewalks on certain occasions last year. Also, it seems prudent to probe existing inequities between long-established lodging owners who pay licensing fees and taxes and short-term rental operations popping up without facing similar requirements. Operators dodge parameters their local lodging competitors abide by. Mockery of the general plan arises with insidious growth of under-the-radar lodgings. Steadfast and robust municipal revenue streams are bypassed with physical leakage. Let's stop predatory profiteers from seizing the market share as rogue shapers of our community. They can hurt us far more than dips in tax revenue streams. And once again, that was from Dulce Satterfield. Thank you. That concludes public comment.
Thank you. We have before us a recommendation to receive a presentation regarding the preliminary 3-year budget forecast for fiscal year 2026 and fiscal year 2028 through fiscal year 2028 as a kickoff to the budget process and in advance of the capital improvement project plan review at the future meeting. May I have a motion and a second?
Motion to approve. Second.
Great. Any discussion, further discussion? Madam Clerk, please take roll.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you, Ms. Sale and our city manager. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to city council goals and strategic plan status. Will the staff please present the report?
Yes, thank you. And as we move on, I did want to note, because it was related to the public comment, I just wanted to highlight though that the council has taken several actions that we didn't highlight with that last budget forecast proactively to already start making adjustments either to the forecast that have positively impacted the forecasted budget or some of the items that were mentioned by the public comment, and such as the council had already proactively adjusted the budget in late 2023 with an eye on balancing the budget and that had positive results that have better positioned us for the future. And then second, specifically regarding the comments regarding sort of economic development and trying to support businesses, the city has recently adopted several code amendments that are specifically focused on doing that and trying to make things easier for businesses, or letting businesses advertise easier, or allowing businesses to have additional uses prior to, or more than what they had previously. So those are all things that we are going to continue to work on, but I do want to highlight that we've also taken several steps on those recently to those are, it's a marathon, not a sprint. When you're looking at community development, there's usually not one magic bullet, but if you set up the city code to support local businesses, then you'll start to see that growth happen. So those are things that are in progress and have been put in place, and we have ordinances in place going into effect, and probably some future ones that will be recommended with those same thoughts in mind. And it does tie into the council goals and strategic plan, because it does tie into several of our goals in strategic areas. We have this item on the agenda to do our update and review of our council goals and strategic plan. As quick background, in 2022, the City Council adopted a 10-year plan to guide the city's priorities, ensuring alignment among the council staff and the community. The 5 goals are identified on this slide, and we'll get into a little bit more detail, but essentially 5 goals. Goal 1, provide best levels of service for residents and businesses. Goal 2, develop fiscal and economic excellence. Goal 3, promote innovation and opportunity. Goal 4, ensure a safe, secure, inclusive, and beautiful community. And Goal 5, to develop strategic partnerships. And so we wanted to go through, knowing that we adopted a 10-year plan a few years ago, we wanted to essentially start with a brief update of some of the items we are working on, have implemented, and or are continuing to implement in these categories. And so we'll go through those. I'll try to go through those quickly, and we can talk in more detail about any items that the council wants to discuss. But just quickly, for example, for best levels of services for residents and businesses, we had 4 areas. First was become an employer of choice, and we've sort of revamped our HR department with a focus on these items like employee recruitment, retention, recognition, and wellness projects, and we have those things. Those items are ongoing. Second, use customer-focused technology improvements. We are getting to the finish line on implementing a new enterprise software system, the Tyler Enterprise System, which includes customer-focused technology improvements like utility bill payment improvements and work order system improvements. And so we are nearing the finish line on implementing that, and that'll be a major technology enhancement. Third, under Goal 1 is improving online services, information, public outreach tools, and customer service. We've really put a focus on building our public outreach program, utilizing social media and our city websites more effectively, and then launching things like our monthly newsletter to try to provide better outreach. Fourth is improve processes, including efficiency and quality. And a lot of those improvements were focused on the implementation of the Tyler Enterprise System and the workflow enhancements that would bring. So we are nearing the finish line on the Tyler system. Goal 2 was to develop fiscal and economic excellence. There are 4 sub-goals there. A, create fiscal and debt management policies. I think this ties into the last item and the note that we created and implemented a capital improvement project funding policy. And then we plan to work on some of those pension-related policies and some other conservative budgeting-focused policies that we'll be preparing and bringing forward to the council. Second, prepare economic development roadmap. We have prepared that. We are now at a point where we're ready to start implementation. One of the challenges is going to be several of the items that need to be implemented require funding to be implemented. So that's also something we'll have to build into the budget and keep in mind as we work through the budget. Third, explore revenue improvement options, including city property options. We are exploring both of those things, revenue improvement options, like some of the ones we mentioned during the prior item, and also there's a couple of properties that myself and Community Economic Development Director Tony Stewart are looking for options that we will bring forward to the council to further that goal. Then fourth, and this is really the one change that I recommend, is we had a specific focus of expanding cannabis business opportunities. I think in light of everything we just talked about and sort of our thought process moving forward, we were really talking about long-term, really changing this to just expanding business opportunities and not focusing on cannabis. I think we can honestly say we have focused on cannabis. We actually, even in the last 18 months, have done several code amendments and adjustments to support some of the cannabis businesses and make it easier for them to operate as well. But I think we're really looking big picture and realizing that I think it's time to shift, or our recommendation will be to start shifting to looking at all of our businesses and not necessarily just focusing on cannabis at this point. Goal 3, promote innovation and opportunity. First is the implementation of the IT master plan. We have that master plan's adopted and we are now implementing it. It's in progress, and we'll do an update to council in coming months with the status of that implementation. Second was implement the finance system, Tyler, which I've mentioned is in process. Third was implement and better utilize social media and outreach tools. Again, we are in progress on that with significant growth. I think at one point we had a couple week period where we had something like 250% growth on our social media, and that isn't all the time, but we've really focused on that and have grown that. And then fourth is the preparing the broadband master plan, and that actually was on our we had an item on our last city council agenda to approve reception of a grant to start with one of the projects on the broadband master plan, specifically improving broadband access near the beach to both public facilities but also to the communities there. So we have that grant moving forward. And then we'll be looking at, that's a grant to design broadband, and then we'll be looking at a grant to implement. So we're working actively on that as well and have made progress in recent months. And fourth goal, there was five sections. First was public safety. And at the time it was identified as traffic safety, crime prevention, emergency management, and response. And so those are areas that we have focused on, such as implementing the traffic division, which we did about a year ago. And then we have launched and held emergency preparedness trainings with our different city department representatives, which was something that we really had a need to start doing. So we've been putting a focus on those. Also, I didn't list it on this, but the police department has been working with some of our shopping center owners and operators to try to focus on crime prevention at some of the major shopping centers. Second, park improvements and community service programs. I think the main one identified at the time was the Bubbling Springs project, and that's been a major project for the city as a whole, across departments. And then the good news with that is it's coming along well, and we expect to be able to announce the grand opening. We'll expect to announce the date of the grand opening in coming weeks. So that is moving forward significantly. We've also done some things like, I think at the time, one of the projects that was identified was getting the teen center open at the community center, and also some of the recreation program that we've opened. So those have also been launched and in progress in this period. Third, beach preservation and erosion prevention. I think the main one is the one that's ongoing now, and that's that we have advocated and continued to advocate and continued to engage on ensuring that our sand restoration dredge project is proceeding, and so they're working as we speak. Fourth, tree management and updated landscaping standards. We had a tree committee, or a landscaping standard committee, who proposed updated standards for landscaping and tree maintenance. Those have now been adopted, and we're now implementing those standards, so we're making good progress on those. And then last under this goal is infrastructure, including water, wastewater, streets, etc. We've completed several projects such as the Water Master Plan, and also we're ongoing with the largest main wastewater sewer line project that we've had in many years, replacing 60-year-old pipe. And then we have several other additional projects in process. And then goal 5, and we spent some time talking about this last year. It was sort of a focus area with the logic that the first 4 goals are really staff focused. You know, the council identifies the goal in the project area, and staff implements. The strategic partnerships is really an area that also includes more council involvement to develop these from this point still to implement some of these goals. So some of the strategic partnerships that the city council has identified as part of the strategic plan is first, the port. We always identify both port / Oxnard Harbor District, but it's one and the same. I will report along those lines that at the staff level, the city and the port have recently taken several steps to enhance the collaboration, including for the first time we had, I believe it was 2 weeks ago now, for the first time we had a staff-to-staff level collaboration where we brought in sort of cross-departmental groups from each agency, sort of, you know, our person and then their counterpart at the port, and we really had a long collaborative discussion about some of the projects we're working on, and so that was a positive step forward. So we're continuing to work on that partnership. Second, Naval Base Ventura County. We've built that relationship with the Naval Base liaison and representation at the base, and we've, in the last 18 months or so, that's resulted in coordination on San Pedro Street parking, but also the guardrail fixes on Channel Islands, and we are continuing to work on that. We had, I think when we talked about this last year, we said that we expected a change of command soon, and now we can look back and say we've had a recent change of command. So I think that one's a struggle, just in that every 4 years you kind of have to rebuild that that connection. So that's something on the goals list for this year. Third, community services / programming, schools, libraries, Boys and Girls Club, etc. That was what was identified in the document. And so we can report that we've been working with the library on a reopening plan, as Ned said earlier, and we're coordinating together on that and hoping to announce more soon. And then we worked successfully with the Boys and Girls Club on reopening the teen center after the storms, and coordinating with them to make sure everything was able to reopen as quickly as possible and as smoothly as possible. And then we also have been working with them on the grant that we have in place that is a partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. And then we recently, as was presented to the council, we recently received a grant separate from these entities, but we did receive a grant for our own recreational after-school programming as well. So we're continuing to work on community services and programming, and especially partnerships with those agencies. Sand Collaborative, we worked with our partners regarding the dredge, and I think that's something we'll need to continue to work on this year to move forward. school district. Myself and our chief have met with the school superintendent to start talking about some of the projects that we could develop long-term. And that's something we plan to continue to do. And then homelessness was the other one. Homelessness partners identified in the plan was the Ventura County Continuum of Care, Mercy Housing, City of Oxnard, et cetera. And we have continued to try to develop those partnerships. And we work with our partners on projects such as the Backpack Medicine and some other programs. So those are ongoing as well. And so those are the 5 goal areas with the priority projects areas identified by the council as part of that strategic planning. And so we wanted to provide the update on what we're working on what things are in progress. And at this time, we're presenting it for consideration by the council with the ability for council to provide feedback and direction regarding any changes or any specific projects or things along that line. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Does council have any questions at this time? We're going to have discussions later. Any
Yes,
questions at this time?
I do. Regarding goal number 2, going back to economic development, is there currently, or will there be any type of plan, working group, collaboration with the property managers of all these different shopping centers that we have to try to focus on how to bring in businesses, what they can do to help maintain businesses? We just lost another business to Oxnard. Every time I turn around, another business is leaving a shopping center. But is there any discussion or hopefully future discussion regarding that line?
Yeah, and I think one of the first projects, I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but I think it was something along the lines of like sort of restart the Chamber of Commerce. And I think that's definitely an area of need. I think initially our first thought was if we have a chamber, let's try to see if we can kind of restart it, reboot it and get that moving. But I think if we aren't able to, that's going to be something we're going to have to look at and come up with an alternative, because I do think that's a weak spot we have is right now there's not really like a voice for the business community or a place for the businesses to go and have those types of conversations. As a city, we can and should try to have those conversations, but it's always a little different because people are sometimes afraid to tell the city if there's a problem or if if they have a question and they think if they ask the city that the city will be alerted to what a problem going on their property or things like that. So I do think that those are things we will need to do as we get going on our economic development plan moving forward. So,
Thank you.
Councilmember Hernandez.
No question, but I do want to have an opportunity. I hope that we'll have an opportunity to discuss future goals. Okay.
Councilmember Gama.
How do we collaborate with? Sorry about that. How do we collaborate with the base? I mean, change of commands. I hear San Diego comes up all the time, Point Mugu, but I know it's all about national security, but they also run a pretty effective business out there moving cars off the base. So how do we talk to them? Who do we talk to for collaboration and partnerships?
I think it depends on exactly what area we're focusing on. And I think we talked a little bit about, we connected with the Navy base liaison and we worked with them on specific projects, but that's not really a big picture long-term goal discussion. And that's not necessarily, I don't think that's necessarily the way you'd want to have that conversation. So I think it depends on what our specific goal is. And if it is something that sort of falls into the wheelhouse of the liaison, I think we're building that connection where we've been working with them. But some of the things that I've heard discussed are bigger conversations where we may need to have that conversation with the commanding officer, or like you said, I think one of the conversations we did have with the base about a year ago, sort of the end result was we needed to talk to San Diego, not necessarily our people at stationed at our base. So it just depends. It seems like longer term, bigger picture goals are more San Diego discussions. So.
Yes. Any other questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes. So, few meetings ago, we talked about rezoning. Some of these areas have some of these ownerships of these buildings that are, not, the storefronts are not actually full. Mm-hmm. Have we had any positive feedback with that from those owners?
We've had a couple of property owners who have reached out to us to ask us, basically wanting to understand exactly what that means. Essentially along the lines of, well, I have an idea for this, and in the past I couldn't do that. Is that something that you guys are open to now? Is that something that would be allowed now? So we've had a couple conversations along those lines, mostly resulting in, at this point, because it hasn't been very long, so mostly it was, we gave them some information on what the changes were, and then they said they'll come back to us then, like kind of wrap their heads around that and come back to us with some proposals. So there's been a couple. One challenge for us is we're sort of generally referred to as a built-out city, and so we have a couple of opportunities, areas where somebody was thinking about maybe redeveloping or kind of expanding or adding on, but we don't have a whole lot of property. Other cities, if you make that change and you have acres and acres of vacant property, somebody can come in and really take advantage of that. For us, it's always a challenge because like what we're hearing so far is people who already have businesses and buildings, but they're maybe interested in adding a use to it or something like that. So
I was just curious.
We're starting to hear it.
Yeah, because you look at Wagon Wheel, and
Mm-hmm.
you have mixed zoning where you have commercial and then residence on top. So there's a couple areas that would be prime that we saw that we were targeting for rezoning.
Yeah. We've had a couple of property owners in some of those, I think the areas that we're all thinking, who have said they want to come talk to us.
Thanks.
One more question I forgot. Trying to use a surfer mentality, look ahead, and how do you define success with regards to the dredge? Because my understanding is they're going to come up way short this cycle, and we had a hard time getting it started. So when it comes to strategic plans and goals, it's like, I'm looking ahead and thinking we might see a repeat of 2013 when you lived here and saw what happened.
Yeah, and the positive is, I think and you tell me if I'm wrong, but the challenge there is I don't think we got any sand that year. Isn't that right?
Got 600,000 cubic yards, and my understanding is we're looking at 1 million cubic yards.
That's we have sort of regular check-ins with the team doing the project, mostly because we actually coordinate with them and we make sure they have access to the promenade and all those types of things. And the latest estimate we got was about 1 million. Yeah,
right.
So it's not what
the goal should be 2.4 million.
Yeah. And
so that's way short.
Yeah. So it's not what they had planned to do previously. There's a couple of things that we should focus on and that we're preparing to focus on and that we're going to recommend that the council focus on. And for example, one of the things is we've still talked to them and talked to the port, who have sort of been one of our key partners in advocating with on the dredge about advocating for them to come back at potentially at like a mid-year to do additional work. It's I don't know. I think we're too early to really talk through the details of that, but we've talked about we've stressed to them the need for the sand, and we've talked to them already about if it can't get done to the level we need, we'd like to keep talking and keep pushing for them to come back sooner or whatever it ends up being. So that's a conversation that I think will be ongoing for this year.
Every 2 years.
Yeah.
Mayor, I have a follow-up question to Mayor Pro Tem's comment or question about zoning, rezoning. Did we not, in our general plan years ago, rezone certain areas, shopping centers, to mixed use? I thought we designated certain areas already. I remember that conversation.
So I guess I don't know when they changed, but some are, and I'm guessing they were rezoned when you were in that time period you mentioned. Yeah.
That's what I remember.
And would mixed use mean what mixed use means today, if it were done?
So mixed use is literally that, and it can be, for example, and cities define it differently, and I have a few city codes in my head, but it could be, an example would be, a residential use in one portion with a retail use in another portion.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
something like that.
That's our definition.
I don't know our definition offhand, but we can get that and send it to the council.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments?
No public comments.
Great, thank you. The recommendation is to,
Discussion.
no, we'll do this first. The recommendation is to receive the report on the current city council goals and strategic plan, status, and provide feedback and direction. Is there a motion and a second?
I'd like to make a motion to receive the report, but with some amendments, which we need to discuss
Okay,
through discussion. So I'm not sure how we'll do that, because my expectation was that we were going to spend most of our time talking about our future goals and setting goals. And now that we've seen the status, I'd like to be able to somehow incorporate our goals. So I'm not sure how we're supposed to do that, our goals for the next year.
but you don't know. Can you give a motion that says that?
I thought we were going to have discussion,
We'll just have discussion after we do the motion and the
Okay.
second.
but that's,
So, well, okay,
what I'm saying,
all
yeah.
right. So we'll just do it that way. I just see a couple of things in here that may have been missed, but I don't think the intent was to detail everything that you've
Correct.
accomplished.
Correct.
So let's not do that. Let's just go ahead, I'll just go ahead and recommend approval of the report, and can then discuss
Yes.
goals. Okay,
Yes.
okay. So
So that's
I'll
your
make the
motion.
motion to approve the report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Great, thank you. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
lots. So,
So let's go ahead, Councilmember Gama.
well, it sounds like staff is on top of everything that we expect them to do. Maybe it's time for us elected officials to get in on the conversation with our strategic partners, like the port, the Navy. Again, the Navy's the Navy, the port. At least we do know that there is an elected body that perhaps that we could come together, elected to elected, and have the conversations that affect our community. Both good and bad. I mean, we all know there's, it's a really good relationship, but there are conversations that we need to have, conversations that matter. So I just think that it would be a really good exercise for the bodies to come together and have a public discussion on the strategic partnership.
Great. You want, Councilwoman?
Okay,
Amanda?
so my thinking in this is that what I'd like to go through is, I've got comments on goals 1 through 5, and I think I can be brief on them if the council allows. With goal 1, provide the best levels of service for residents and businesses. I thought of a couple of goals I would like to see included in there, and I know we talked about code changes, but can we do more to improve the permitting process and the permit timeline? That's one of my suggestions in order to better attract businesses, and I hear it all over the city, is that the permit process, whether it's building a home, remodeling, or setting up a new business, that the permit process is onerous and it's time-consuming. It takes a lot of time. If there's something we could do in that area. And I also would like to see us, in terms of information and outreach, is improve our website. And I think this also speaks to employee retention, because if somebody is looking for a job, that's probably the first place somebody is going to go. And I think that our website has been neglected over the years, and it's, if there's anything we could do in that area to improve it, I would like to see that. The economic development plan, I think that needs to be a key focus for the next year. And I have some suggestions as we get down into strategic partnerships, how we might do that. So I don't really have more on goal 2. Goal 3, I'm glad to see broadband in there. I think that's going to be a great economic development measure for our community, is if we can get that project implemented for the beach area and other areas that don't have broadband. Ensure a safe, secure, inclusive, and beautiful community. I know that the city, that you've been doing some training and emergency preparedness with staff. I don't know that it's reached the level of emergency operations center training, but I hope that that continues. If it is, that I'd like what they've done, what everybody's done with the outreach to the community, but I'm concerned that our staff need to be to receive continued training. And I would also like to see the council receive training on the role of elected officials during disasters, because that was obviously an issue during the January storms, and I don't think that everybody understands what our role can be and what it should be, and I think we need to have a discussion on that. So if the council agrees, I'd like to have some training on that. One thing that was overlooked in Goal 4 was the public art program that and the mural that we launched in 2020. Well, we started it in 2020, but it's actually was completed in 2024. And that was a part of a beautification effort for the city. And not only was it a beautification effort, but it was a highly collaborative effort. We had the port, the city, a local nonprofit, the county involved, and even the schools. So highly collaborative, and I'd like to see us continue pursuing more public art for our city. Also has an economic development measure. The strategic partnerships, I agree with Councilman Gama that we need to improve our communications and what I was going to with our partners. And what I'd like to see is maybe at least once a year do a partnership roundtable, invite the superintendent of schools, invite the leadership from the port, the leadership from the Navy base, the VFW, all those entities and others that I may have not mentioned, to sit down and have a discussion about emergency preparedness, about homelessness, about economic development, and just have a broad agenda where we can just discuss these issues and hear from our partners about their concerns, things that, ways that we can have better relationships, ways that we can deliver better services, whatever's on their mind. And I'd like to see us strengthen our strategic partnerships through some sort of roundtable. With that, that's really all I had. Thank you.
Councilmember Gama?
Yeah, I think those are all great suggestions. However, at this point in time, given our budget concerns, I would hope that we could hyper-focus on economic, fiscal, and our strategic partners. I do think we need to focus on the revenue side of the ledger, and I think hopefully that we could bring the partnerships together and really have some really good conversations that matter. All the things that Councilmember Hernandez mentioned, those are all great, and they feel good, and I get it, but I feel that our focus should be on our budget, revenue streams, economic development, and maybe we could focus on those in the short term right now as we lead up to our budget. Because I don't know if I said it good enough earlier, but there's a big swing in our general fund balance, 3.5 million, 3.9 million projected, and that's a pretty big hurdle to be looking at. So, like I said, I agree with all the other stuff, but I hope that we could focus on our strategic partnerships, revenues, and how we could bring more revenues into the city of Port Hueneme. And then just one other thing, the dredge. Last time I think it cost the city $6 million. And if we just get $1 million and we don't get them back for 2 years, we better prepare for anywhere from $3 to $6 million in damages. I mean, it's that simple. And we know this. And this is what really I don't get it, man. We know what our needs are. We know we need to mimic Mother Nature, and we keep falling short.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Nope.
Just a quick question to our city manager. So based on what our council members have said, what does an action look like?
Like, what does an action look like regarding this item?
Yes.
So let me go through some of those comments, and then I guess I have a suggested
Solution?
yeah,
Approach. At
path
least an
forward, I
approach,
think.
yeah.
So I was keeping a tally of the items. So, for example, improving our permitting process and timelines. I think that does fit under goal D or 1D, improve processes, including efficiency and quality. So it's sort of that same category. To the point, the original strategic plan was, I think, I'm estimating, but I think it was 15 to 20 pages of very complex charts with a lot of data. And we had gone back and we had looked at a couple of the previous discussions. And for me, one of the goals of this item was I didn't want us to lose the forest for the trees. When we're looking at 15 pages of charts, and talk about the ranking of each item versus the other, and we really wanted this discussion to be bigger picture. Here's the goals that we have that we understand from the council, and the goals that we're working on, and tell us if we're on the right path, on the wrong path, or other, or if we want to add, remove, modify any of those things. So this it doesn't have the full level of detail, but I have a feeling that the permitting processes and timelines is included in the improved processes, including efficiency and quality, and so we can confirm that. But I think that would be included in that one. I don't know that we need to add another subsection at this time. Improving the website. Now, I think the reason that's not included here is because I think that we implemented a new website right around the time of the adoption and implementation of this plan, and I think the idea was to start building that website. And so I think the terminology from the original plan was utilize the social media and website. So we can look at that as a starting point, is look at kind of building it out and looking at some of those areas that we can add more information to or clean up some of the areas, for example. So that the website is included in that goal 1C.
Okay.
I think economic development roadmap was the note was just that should be a key focus. So I don't think we need to change anything there, unless I guess one idea would be if somebody wanted to bump that up to a priority level, but it's not really priority ranked, so I don't think that's necessary.
You know, and I just wanted to, if I may,
Yeah, sure.
just interrupt for a second. I do like City Council Member Perez's idea about putting together a working group to look at economic development ideas and,
Yeah, that would
and
be
initiatives. So, and that would be part of, you know, not only economic development, but strategic partnerships as well.
Yeah, and that could be a direction at this point, would be to do that. The only reason I didn't suggest that is because we are going to bring forward at some point in the next couple months the economic development plan with sort of an implementation plan. So we can also talk, like, it's part of that item as well.
Okay, great.
I think goal 3, we just highlighted the importance of the broadband master plan, so I don't think there was any change to that.
No.
Goal 4.
City Manager Vega?
Yeah.
I have a question about the broadband, if you don't mind,
Sure.
Mayor.
Yes, go
The
right.
grant that we got, does that cover what we're planning on?
It covers the design. So far we haven't done any design work. We adopted a plan that highlighted like 3 areas in the city that we know needs better broadband infrastructure. And that's the plan at this point. And so this is the first step now to actually say we're going to focus on one of those areas and actually come up with a design for that area. So the grant that we got, I think, I'm off the top of my head, so I might be wrong. I think it was something like around $270,000 or $300,000 of funding to design it. And then I think the grant was through SCAG, Southern California Association of Governments. And SCAG, when we were meeting with them, said that the typical path is cities get the design grant, do the design, and then that makes them eligible for construction grants, implementation grants. So that's the sort of the fingers crossed process that we want to, that we're hoping for right now. And so that was approved last council meeting, so we're still kind of early in that design phase, but the hope is that was like a concrete step forward to getting a design and hopefully implementation funding. And I think that's probably, even that project on its own is probably a couple year-long project, so I think that's the focus for us right now in the broadband master plan.
With the broadband master plan, is that, and I can't remember what it's called, is it going to connect at all with what's happening in the county area with the main line of broadband that's supposed to go across? You know what I'm talking about? That EDC is a part of?
Yeah,
And
the
it's supposed
last
to fork down
mile.
into to each city area?
Yeah, it's been a little hard to figure that out yet. I think that the final word we got on that is that project is going to be focused on areas that meet the qualifications of being considered low income. I think they're using a different word. I think it's in need, I think, or but you get the general. And for us, none of our areas are in that category. And I thought I had heard that like essentially most of the county isn't in that category now. I think there might be like a couple areas on the east end of the county that are gonna potentially be impacted by that project. So I think when that project started, I think we all got the presentations, 6-7 years ago at this point. I think the idea, like that was the idea, and then it's really just developed into being for those areas that are not in Port Hueneme. And then, so emergency preparedness, we have the goal and we have the focus area of emergency preparedness. I think the request was more for
Electeds, for the council.
Yeah, the council elected official training. And I think that could be like
can be a
s-
a council presentation.
Yeah, that could just
Yeah.
be a simple presentation. So I think that,
Executive level.
yeah, it doesn't have to change our goals. It could just
No.
be something we bring back.
Okay.
And then probably, well, that and the partnership roundtable would be the two that I think the council should, they don't need to change the goals, but it's basically a question for the council is that the approach you want to take to implement it? And if so, that can be the discussion.
Well, it's kind of like to further define the goals. I mean, it's
Well, it's a work plan. It's kind of like you take a goal and then you figure out, well, okay, the objective is how
So-
you're going to accomplish it.
so over here, like when we look at 5D, sand collaborative. Well, great, we're successful. The dredge is out there, but we need to define the goal. What does success look like? And to me, getting the full allotment of sand that we need to prevent chaos.
Yeah, but
Yeah, that
It may
would
not-
be,
may not
that's our
be-
personal goal. I mean, that's our
No,
personal
no, no, no. I disagree. You could smile all you want, but the
No, no,
bottom
no.
line is the beach. The
it could be,
beach
it may
goal.
not be a smart goal. It may not be realistic.
Yeah,
So
that's what I'm
that's,
saying.
yeah.
No,
yeah,
I
so-
disagree. It has to be. It has to
But
be.
we have, it's not up to us. I mean, we have to go to Congress every 2 years to
Well,
get
then
that
we
money.
and we
then
need to be more effective in going to Congress and getting that money and getting them to
we're doing the
understand
best- We're all doing the best we can and through advocacy.
it's
and
not
so
working.
Sometimes it's not going to work, you know?
I don't accept that.
Did you have anything else to add?
I think, so there's those two items, the emergency, or the council, the elected officials' emergency preparedness role training, and then the partnership roundtable. And the only other comment I'll make is just as regards to that last discussion. That's where that fifth goal is sort of the area that we said, that's the one that I sort of anticipate that it may need to be sort of discussed annually by the council of sort of kind of re-establishing or re-identifying or updating like what the goals are for each of those partnerships. And last year we did have an item, as one idea there, last year we did have a item, kind of a separate standalone discussion where it was just the discussion on the goals for each of those partnerships. And we did have the council ended up adopting goals for the port, the naval base, Ventura County, and I feel like there was a third. I think there was a third, but I'm blanking right now. So one idea could be to just review those annually as well. We adopted like goals for each of those, and we could bring those back each year and just say, yes, these are the same goals, or or we want to add, remove, modify goals. So I think those are the three sort of options that the council can discuss.
Great. Anything else? Any other discussion? And are you okay with your motion?
Well, I'm not sure. Are you saying that you recommend we review the goals versus having a roundtable, a partnership, a roundtable? Or
I think sort of as we're discussing that goal 5 area and potentially a partnership roundtable, we could just, I think my thought is, why don't we schedule an item at an upcoming council meeting just focused on goal
Okay.
5?
Great.
And then whether, it can list some options. We can review the goals of each agency. We can discuss a partnership roundtable or any other approach.
Okay, sounds great.
So defining partnership roundtable, is that electeds to electeds?
The
Electeds
council could
to a
define it that
leadership,
way.
yeah.
Yeah. So the idea would be the council would say how they want to do that.
Mhm.
So
On this next agenda item.
yeah, and so it would probably be, I think our next agenda is looking pretty full, so it'd probably be that first meeting in March. But we can bring, March 3rd. So we can bring back the strategic partnerships section and go through
Have
those.
recommendations. Okay.
Okay, so are you okay with your current motion? And so we'll go ahead and, should we come back around and add that as an agenda item when we do the agenda?
I think
future
we
agenda
could-
items, or do you want to do that right now?
I think right now, maybe a motion to, assuming that it's the will of the council to
Yes.
schedule a elected official emergency preparedness training and to return with an item at a future meeting regarding the strategic partnerships and potentially holding a partnership round.
Okay, so let's go ahead and amend the motion. Would you like to do that?
Or this, how about a new emotion?
You can do that.
It
You
could be
can
a
do
new
that.
one.
Okay, so the new motion would be to ask staff to consider to come back with training at date to be determined on the role of elected officials during disasters, and to agendize a discussion item on a strategic partnerships
And to receive the brief.
and receive the brief.
Second?
Second.
This is the motion, so let's go ahead and finish the motion first. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second, okay. Now go ahead, let's do the discussion.
I just recall that I attended I think 2 of them at Cal City's workshop training on elected officials and disaster preparedness. So I think that would be a really good resource, and our newest council member will probably be heading up there soon. But I think that would be a really great resource for us.
Is that Cal Cities? You
Yeah.
said?
Yeah, thank you. Madam Clerk, can you take a vote, please?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Great, we'll move to our final agenda item, out-of-state travel request for Regional Defense Partnership lobbying trip to Washington, D.C.
Thank you. Yeah, this item, I think, started simple and got complicated, so bear with me. Initially, we have this item on the agenda to allow the council to designate either the primary representative or the alternate representative to attend the Regional Defense Partnership lobbying trip to Washington, D.C., but to also provide direction regarding desired goals or talking points for those meetings. I believe the current status is, I believe both the primary representative and the alternate representative are unable to attend, is my understanding. And so the council could discuss, if desired, whether to send another representative. We haven't checked with RDP to see if they have any concern about that yet, but I would say, the item's on the agenda. So if the council determines whether they want to send somebody, then we can then reach out to RDP and sort of coordinate that and make sure everything works. That's the item. I think one note, we sent out a email just before the meeting that Mayor Pro Tem Lopez has notified us that he needs to recuse from step down from the RDP board due to just conflict with his day job, I guess, to keep it simple. So we don't have, this item is not, we didn't write this item to allow for a discussion of the RDP appointments. It's only for the designation for the trip. And so we'll schedule a meeting or an item for a future meeting to allow the council to discuss the RDP appointments. At this point, that would leave the alternate member as our sort of lone representative right now for RDP. As I mentioned earlier, my understanding is neither could attend the DC trip at this point. So it's up to council whether to discuss appointing somebody to attend this meeting, and then there will be a future meeting, a future item at an upcoming meeting to discuss the RDP appointments as a whole.
I have a
But this is
motion.
related to the trip.
I have a motion.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Thank you, James, for that summary. I unfortunately can't go because I scheduled another trip the last week of March, but I would like to make a motion that we send our mayor, who has been serving on RDP for several years now and knows the topic areas pretty well. I think she'd be a good fit with the team. Everybody knows her, and she knows the ropes and what's involved in those trips. So I'd like to make a motion to nominate her to go.
I second.
Just for the record, there are no public comments.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so discussion, any discussion?
I don't understand what our goal is, talking about goals and objectives. What is our goal of going to Washington on this lobbying trip for, I guess, the Navy? I mean, the only way I could support us sending any one of us to Washington if we're going to go and focus on our dredge issues and getting our sand from the Army Corps of Engineers. So we need to focus on revenue generation. We need to focus on our budget, and I just don't see what this expense is going to provide on that matter. So I'm not too excited about going to.
Yeah, I'll just have a couple of words if I can. Just for history, RDP was created to really push back on BRACs, if you know it, base realignment and closures, base closures. So that's why they were established. And so how I see the importance of participation is looking at the other side. And so what if the base closed, right? We lose the military, we lose revenue, we lose, a population of folks that supports our city. And so I think there is, last time we were there, we learned that there were grants. When you live outside of a military base, you can actually get grant support in support of the Navy. We share, I think we share water. We share maybe our electrical structure. So there are some things that, because we're outside the gate, we could actually request funding from the government. We haven't done that, but it doesn't mean that we can't do it. Last year was the first year, I think we learned a lot about some of the things that are available to us, right? And I think we can leverage that.
Well, that's kind of my point. Like, do we have a list? What are we going for? What do we have a list of objectives that we're trying to bring back to the city that benefit the city?
Well, I think we're talking about two things. One is that's for the council to do, and I think that's part of what our city manager mentioned to us earlier, that we had to talk about that. But the other thing is, we haven't sent, other than learning about these grants that are available to us, we haven't structured ourselves or prepared ourselves for such visits. So I think that's something that we as a council must do. Now, I will tell you, this is an organization that supports the military. So we can't think about going and not connecting ourselves to the military, because that is what the group is all about. So we have to do our due diligence to make sure we can do that.
If I could just, are you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, all right, if I could just
Councilmember
comment. This is actually one very good opportunity for us to meet with Julia Brownlee's office and talk about the dredging project. The county's represented there, we're represented there, the Navy's represented there, and we are a coalition that advocates for the monies that support the dredging project. So every year we go, we sit in Julia's office and we have that discussion. So that's one really, I think you should be happy to hear, one benefit that we have when we go to DC, is we talk about that.
But it's not effective. We're in a quandary right now.
But that's
with
no
the
reason
dredging.
not to go. That's not a reason not to go.
I have a comment.
Okay, thank you.
So, every council member is assigned $4,000 for which we can use towards whatever trips we would like to do. If that is the trip she wants to do, she is allowed to do so. And B, we can have a meeting. It's not until March, right? The end of March.
Right.
We can have a meeting to set up our plan and outline goals that we would like her to present and talk about. So
I have a comment.
Go right ahead.
So during working through RDP, as we progress going towards DC, you hit every department within the Navy, Coast Guard, Air National Guard, Navy, and each division within those areas. And they discuss areas where they need help with to lobby, because they can't lobby for themselves. And this is where you start forming your strategic partnership, and you got everybody in the room. You get to hear what the roadblocks, what the issues are, because those things bring revenue to the base, and they bring contractors in, and some of them can fill from Port Hueneme. We just don't know where these entities are coming from, but it's a workup to RDP, to the trip. So right now there is an agenda. As it progresses each week, you're going to another meeting, hitting a different organization, identifying what their goals are. That's my comment.
Yeah.
If I could just add also.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the meetings with the installations begin, I think this week. And so it's hopefully the mayor would be able to attend those and get more information on the white papers that are going to be written and taken to DC. But the other thing I wanted to add was that as I sit on the strategic committee for RDP, my main job there has been to report on the status of the dredging project. They have just as much concern about coastal erosion and sea level rise as we do, just like the port. So that's where we find our strength, is with that coalition and going to DC and having that opportunity to be in Julia's office and have that sit down and talk to her. We have to keep trying. To not try would be to give up and be counterproductive to our whole efforts here. So,
I agree with all that you said. I'm just trying to emphasize the point that I thought we were golden 2 years ago. We went through a long, hard process. We got the dredge on. They came and delivered 100,000 cubic yards more than Mother Nature would have. And then here we are 2 years later falling way short. And if not for City Manager Vega, who called attention to it, I communicated it to the coastal cities in Cal Cities. Hey, this new water thing, the Army Corps of Engineers decided that they can't do dredging because they're going to have to clean the material. That was a major thing. And thanks to City Manager Vega, not the county, not Julia Brownlee, not the Army Corps of Engineers, but, our city manager looking out for us. So I just want effectiveness. If we're going to go, let's be effective. And you're right. There's a lot out of our control. And, when I first came on council, I said I was going to be the Dufresne of letter writing to get the dredge process. Andy Dufresne. You laugh, but why not?
No, I'm just saying.
Why not do that?
Because it's counterproductive to the process.
Is it counterproductive? But we're not being successful.
We've been told not to
We're
write
not
letters.
successful.
They have a lobbyist. They're using their lobbyists. Let's go through
It
that
hasn't
process.
been successful. Here we are again. So let's just watch
You
and
can
see what
vote no
happens.
if you want.
I don't want to go.
Councilman Gama. Okay.
Let's vote.
Okay, so you have
No, I
comments?
said let's
Okay,
vote.
great. Did I go public comments? You said no public comments?
Yes, there's no public
Great,
comment.
thank you. The recommendation is to consider the request for out-of-state, consider the request for out-of-state travel from Sunday, March 23rd, 2025 through Thursday, March 27th, 2025, for the mayor to represent if needed, to attend the Regional Defense Partnership lobbying trip to Washington, D.C. in support of the Naval Base Ventura County, Point Mugu, Port Hueneme, using individual council member budget funds. Provide directions to the city RDP representatives regarding any desired goals or talking points for their meeting. May I have a motion and a second?
We have a motion, we have a second, so we need a vote.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please take a vote.
Okay, I'm just gonna do a roll call vote. So, Councilmember Hernandez?
Yes.
Councilmember Gama?
Yes.
Councilmember Perez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez?
Yes.
And Mayor McQueen-Lejeune?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
So the first meeting in March, we'll bring back the RDP appointment with, I think what I heard was that at that same time, we can also include an item or a recommendation. So we talk about any talking points, goals, and then I think we'll do our best to schedule that the same day as the strategic partnerships discussion, which also ties right into it. So
Okay, great.
it'll probably be that first meeting in March so that there's time to prepare for the March 23rd trip. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll move on to the city manager comments and reports.
Yes, thank you. And I have just a couple of things this week. We actually have a big opening to announce, which is we are planning to do our ribbon cutting and our opening at of the Hueneme Beach swing set. After a long wait, it is scheduled to open on Wednesday, February 5th at 3:30 p.m. About 10 minutes after we set that, the forecast changed to rain, as it always does. But I think it'll change before then. And if not, I think some kids will enjoy still going out on the swings in the rain. So we're gonna open it one way or another. If nothing else, they can get out there when the rain stops. So, but we're particularly proud of it. It's accessible. That was sort of the challenge that we had to work through, is making an accessible swing set on the beach. And we were out there earlier today, and it looks great. And we're excited to cut the ribbon and invite the community to start using the Hueneme Beach swing set.
Mr. City Manager, I thought it was going to be the padded material all the way underneath, but no, that's the one section is enough for ADA?
Yes, it's it's not there. There's additional swings to the left of the padded area. Yeah. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So we have the beach swing set, ribbon cutting, and it's just going to be a quick ribbon cutting sort of. The goal is to get people out in the swing set as quick as possible, so it won't be any elaborate ceremony, but we'll do that on February 5th. We also just wanted to give a reminder because the new dates of the beach festival are sneaking up on us. So it's a reminder to the public to mark their calendars and for us to mark our calendars for July 12th and 13th. The idea this year is kick off the summer with the beach festival, and then that allows us to end the summer with the banana festival. And so we'll have kind of the kickoff and the ending of summer. So mark your calendars for July 12th through 13th. Then one more item to mark calendars with is the Community Benefit Fund, which is the partnership between the city and the port, has officially set the date for the Sea Splash Color Dash 5K and Kids 1K, and then a free health and wellness fair post-race for Saturday, March 22nd. We will open online registration on February 10th. And last year, this did sell out quickly. We've opened it up to more people this year, but we're recommending everybody set their calendar reminder for February 10th to register for the event.
What time does it start?
It's in the morning. I think it was 9 o'clock. Yeah, I think it's 9 o'clock, and then I know we have to be there early, so I think we're going to be there doing some things earlier before that. But the race is, I believe, 9 o'clock. So, and then as far as February 18th's agenda, these are the items we currently have scheduled. That's why we mentioned earlier that the next agenda is a more full one. So some of those other items will come back in March. But we have presentations for the per the council's approved list of presentation items. We have the Mother Day language. No, it's Mother Language. I think we flipped that. I think it's the Mother Language Day proclamation. So I have a typo there. And then a proclamation for Black History Month as well. And then, and we were going to do that today, but we postponed it to the 18th because we were trying to include some representatives who helped put together the Martin Luther King Jr. Events this year. We wanted to invite them to the meeting. So, and then for business items, we have a few traffic-related items that we had said we'd come back to review. Some of the adjustments we made. We were going to do a like sort of a 6-month review of the impact of installing some of the stop signs we installed and changing some of the traffic speed limits and things like that. And then we also want to report back on the end of our pilot project report for I think it's the Market Street Panoma stop signs, and we're hoping to also be able to provide the status update of our traffic donut demonstration project as well, anti-traffic donut vehicle donut demonstration project. Yeah, yeah. So that, and then we had the request from Councilmember Martinez at his last meeting that the council approved to bring back, which is the request for or two reach requests: a request for use of storage at Miranda Park and request for a utility box art project. So those requests will be brought to the council. And then probably the main one, and we got some public comments on that this week, is short-term rental related. So we plan to bring the overview and a survey of options from local cities. I did forget on the, I have a visual aid that's not on the PowerPoint, and I missed it. Councilmember Gama mentioned in the inspiration today the pipe project we're doing. And I happened to run into our team out there before the meeting, and they gave me this section of pipe, HDPE, high density polyethylene. And so just if anybody ever wondered, when we say pipes, we're not talking about, the little pipes we have at home. We're talking about pipes this wide that run under the city. And this pipe material goes through the 60-year-old clay pipe, and a big section of this goes through that. And now we have new pipe under our city instead of a 60-year-old failing clay pipe. And they said interesting statistic is 6,000 gallons a minute go through these pipes,
Wow.
Which is hard to even fathom. So thank you to Brian Fomenko and his team who are out there actively working on it. And so far, knock on wood, ahead of schedule, and working to get that project done to serve the city for the next 60 years, hopefully. So, yeah.
City manager? I just want to add one thing about that pipe. So I'm always interested. And if you look, they'll take 90-foot sections, combine them to be over 500-foot length, right? And so what they do is they take that end of the pipe and they bring the other end of the pipe, they bring it together, and they heat it up to 450 degrees. And then what happens is it's a composite material. It goes like this. And when they bring it together and it cools, it's as strong as extruded pipe. So that's why you can see them jumping around, dumping it, and pulling it through 500 feet to the other side. And it's so remarkable. And then the engine, the fact that we have someone on staff or a whole bunch of staff members that know, hey, there's an abandoned pipe under there and we could do this is just remarkable. And again, it's, be inspired by your water system in and out of your house. 'Cause it's amazing, truly. Yeah, a lot of money.
Saved us money. And then the other thing, the reason I had originally wanted to highlight it was because if everybody remembers, when we first started the project, we were worried about having to shut down access to businesses and shutting down access to residents, and having to run pipe along the streets and really impacting traffic and everything like that. And there's always some impact, but they've really managed to do it in a way now where we didn't have to shut down access to any businesses, any residents. I think we detoured around one street, and maybe a lane reduction in other areas. But they've been able to do it without all those impacts. And we talk about being business friendly and everything, and those are little things that we take for granted. But if you look around, you see those things happen in other cities where a business gets shut down because they're doing a construction project, and we try to make sure that we are being as considerate as we can of all those things. So.
Great, thank you. We'll move to council member reports. We'll start with Councilmember Perez.
I have a EDC executive meeting this week, and I'll miss the ribbon cutting for the swing sets, unfortunately. But it sounds like it's going to rain anyway, so. And I had a Boys and Girls Club board meeting. They were just talking about they're rebuilding the whole Port Hueneme building. So they're going to be out of classes and looking for space. So I don't know. That's who I was asking for the Baptist Church contact, because they're trying to contact to see if anybody has any space so they can keep classes going so that nothing gets interrupted for the kids, because otherwise there's a lot of children, a lot of need that go to that center. So they're hoping not to disrupt anything. And that's all I have. I've nothing else coming up.
So Hueneme Beach cleanup is phenomenal. We're doing so good, and all the hard work that we've done over the last 8 years, maybe even longer. You can really see it come together. You see the county clearing out their flood control ditches. We even actually see the city of Oxnard stepping up a little bit. And what that means for the lagoon and the outfall, we were out there this weekend, is that there's less trash. I mean, like, measurably less trash than what we dealt with 8 years ago when it was a deluge of trash. However, with the incoming rains, we estimate that we may need to organize volunteers, not to the effort that we've done in the past for placement of dumpsters out there. We were out there this weekend, and we all filled our buckets up with plastic bags, like to the point, but there is bulky stuff out there, and we feel like after this rain event that's coming, we may have a need for things that we've done in the past. And there's going to be some cost involved, and I think we would dust off our agreement with the city of Oxnard since we're going into Oxnard. I learned a new word tonight: granularity. Thank you, Dulce. The scale or level of detail present in a set of data or other phenomenon. An example is the bill data doesn't provide sufficient granularity to answer the questions. There's a lot to get out of that public comment, but I think granularity is a word that we all could relate to, particularly when we look at our budgets and stuff like that. Ventura Animal Services, remarkable event happened. I don't know if any of you caught it. So we have a new director. He came out and visited our city not too long ago. Esteban Rodriguez, I believe. Really good guy, and I took him around and showed him our whole area. And here's a guy that brings outside the box thinking, because the Animal Service has been overwhelmed with too many animals, overcapacity. And I don't know how or where it came from, but they flew 42 dogs to another state that had the capacity to accept the dogs, and some of the dogs were housed there for over a year or longer. And so we got some great people over there, and support your local animal services. Don't send your money to these national organizations. That's it.
Councilmember Hernandez.
All right, so busy week this week. I'll be attending the Veterans Stand Out tomorrow, just kind of to observe. I used to volunteer on that many, many years ago, so I'm really curious to see how it's evolved. We have our first installation meeting under RDP with U.S. Coast Guard tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I'll be attending that. And I've actually been asked to do a couple of fire presentations on the fires, the LA fires, so I'll be going to do one for our HOA tomorrow night. Thank you for the newsletters, Mr. City Manager. I'll make sure those get distributed to our residents. We have an RDP strategic meeting on Wednesday. I'll be participating in that. And then I'll be going through my first orientation with the Clean Power Alliance on Wednesday at 1:30. It'll be a Zoom call. Unfortunately, I won't be able to attend the ribbon cutting for the swing set either. Navy League on Thursday, and got something else in there, I'm not sure what that is. And then that's it for this week, and I don't have any reports on past meetings, so thank you, that's all.
Great, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes. So I did attend the Mayor's Academy last week in Anaheim, hosted by Cal Cities, and got a lot of good information, a lot of learning. So that was a very good event. I will be at the swing set ribbon cutting Wednesday. I would like to hear something on the master water plan, just with water pressure. I've heard residents from Harbor Lights areas saying that they have weak water pressure, and want to see if we have what are we tracking as far as pipe replacement for water. Also on the south side, got 40 PSI, barely meeting their minimum thresholds. So I was just kind of curious where we sit with the master water plan. And then a shout out to Micaela Perez of Oxnard District 6. She's been working hard with coastal cleanup as well. That's all I got.
Thank you, thank you. So I'll be returning to my monthly meetings, GCTD, VRSD, VCTC, and then next week, Air Pollution Control District Board. Currently, the chair of Gold Coast Transit expected to be named the chair of Air Pollution Control Board next week. I did also attend the Mayor and Council Member Academy, Cal Cities, last week. I did attend the Alaska, and I think most of us attended the Alaska 261 Memorial. It was really a nice event. Got a chance to then run over to Orvine Carpenter's 100th birthday celebration, which was also really nice. I participated in the County City Selection Committee last week, where we were able to fill positions on 4 county committee and boards. And then for GCTD, tomorrow is Ride-Free Transit Equity Day. And it's also the birthday of Rosa Parks, which is being celebrated tomorrow. So, and do plan to attend the swing ribbon cutting as well. So that's what I have. Anything else? No one? Okay. Requests for future agenda items. We'll start with Councilmember Perez.
I don't have anything, thank you.
Councilmember Gama, nothing. Councilmember Hernandez, Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I said it already, but the master water plan would like a brief on actual water delivery into the residents.
Great. If there is nothing else, City Manager.
Just to follow the process, technically,
We have to take a vote.
Yeah, it's a vote.
Okay. Can I get a motion and a second?
So here,
He had the motion.
So my motion is to review the the master water plan on the piping of like the south side Harbor Lights area. I just want to see where we're at in terms of that infrastructure, where, because it seems like we can't turn the pressure up without water leakage. So I'm kind of curious. So I guess what I'm asking for is a brief on the master water plan.
I have a side question related to that. Do you sit on the water agency? The
Excuse me?
Hueneme Water Agency? Are you
Our-
one of the
board.
Yeah, our
members?
yeah.
Oh, I figured they could probably give it to you like really quickly without needing to wait for us to do an agenda item.
Well, I want to see what. Okay, I mean, if that's the case too, because what I'm curious is, we have an aging infrastructure. These water mains, if we actually turn the pressure up over 45 psi, we will blow a water main.
Like,
So it sounds like to me you're making a request to have a presentation on water pressure and/or leaky pipes.
Yes.
And then that's what I was going to suggest. And then I think I was going to say I'm not sure if we would bring that to PHWA or the council. So can it just be to
Both?
take it to the appropriate?
Yes.
And we'll figure it out. It's just the PHWA and council split sometimes is not crystal clear which items go to which ones. So sometimes we'll take it to both. That's another thing too. But I think that would be the motion would be to get a briefing on that at the appropriate board meeting.
And they do,
Second.
yeah, we're discussing, sorry.
All in favor?
Yay.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Great. And I don't have anything. Anybody else? Everybody good? Okay. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, February 18th, 2025 at 6:30 PM. The meeting is now adjourned. The time is 9:20.